Hey, good evening, Galleon. Tom O'Leary back. It's Monday night. This is trouble. This is tonight is trouble in the sense a little bit like having an open calendar. And I've learned over the years that the more appointments you have, the more I could stay in order or in line. So I don't really have appointments. I don't have things to talk about. So this will either go real short or we'll touch on a bunch of different issues tonight. Uh, Probably the main things to get back with folks on are that we are moving ahead with a bunch of changes. In fact, we just got done, we as in the Finance Committee, Council President, Service Director, Law Director, some other folks, people from the Health Department, meeting to get on the agenda for tomorrow night some really largely procedural or bookkeeping, accounting kinds of ordinances coming from the health department. What I want to say about that is that people shouldn't jump to the conclusion that this is additional spending or what in the world's going on in the health department. What this is trying to do is follow through on the state auditor. Now, I don't, if it's not fair to slough it off on the state auditor, but it's attributed to the state auditor wanting us to have all of the various health department COVID-related grants tracked individually, rather than all of the money being put into that new health department fund, Fund 230, and then expensed out. The strong preference, I think, from the state is to have each one of those COVID grants tracked independently, tracked in their own funds. So that's really what you'll see tomorrow night, a whole lot of ordinances and some relatively large amounts of money being moved from one appropriation, one spendable category, that being the basic, if you will, general fund of the health department, into these individual funds so that the expenses on contact tracing, on some of the emergency response dollars that health department has been utilizing, that they're accounted for properly. So that's really, it's while it's important, it's almost all procedural, and so I expect council to understand that, move through that pretty quickly, and get the effort that's been put out by the city auditor's city auditor's staff and the health department staff, make that effort, those hours they put in, be worthwhile, bear fruit, if you will. So that's one ordinance. The other ordinance and an accompanying resolution on something called a then and now. I promise I won't torture with a definition of then and now, but basically, when the 598 project came in, there was about 62,000, just slightly over that, of city responsibility, in that the bids came in higher than the state's engineer's estimate. So certainly didn't come in high enough that you couldn't award the project, but high enough that, because we're kind of last dollar in at this point, we have to cover all the bidding overages and whatnot. So we've been asked to go ahead and ship off another $62,000. I believe it'll be money well spent, and the proposal in the ordinance tomorrow, and then covering the then and now, the resolution, will propose to have those dollars come out of the city's capital improvements fund. So, gosh, I'm as mindful as maybe everyone else or anyone else of how it's important not to be drawing down all those capital improvements funds for this project or that project. But I think this is a gap that we need to cover, and it's a for sure expenditure, and so that's going to be the proposal, so that we can make good with ODOT and having all of the city's money in their bank, if you will, in their control, so that as the project unfolds over some this year, but largely next year, we don't have to be worrying about additional money going to that project. So those are really the two pieces of legislation tomorrow. I'll stay on the 598 project for a few minutes. We are working to get scheduled a local public meeting. Our request of ODOT is to have an actual meeting and not a virtual meeting, because I believe most of the attendees, people interested in hearing about how the project is going to be built, east to west or west to east, which end of the project, the southern end or the northerly end, will be constructed in what sequence. Those kinds of things I think will best be communicated, not through a letter, not through a news release or something you have to be lucky enough to find, but through the opportunity to have a public meeting. With few exceptions, the property owners out there in that Portland Way North corridor, really good to work with. We didn't have much trouble in affecting the real estate agreements. I mean, most of them are for temporary easements, temporary takes, so they're permanent front yards or commercial front of their property won't be too badly affected. Temporarily it will be. So there'll be a public meeting. We'll do a good job of getting the word out. It'll be up to the businesses and to the neighbors to actually show up. My expectation is that we'll try to live stream or Facebook in some way the public meeting itself, but it makes it sort of clunky to ask questions, through an interpreter, if you will, reading what's coming in over the live stream. A little bit like we're going to do here in a second. I think that won't be as effective as if we have people in the room and get those questions answered. And so anyways, big project. You always go into one of these projects believing, anticipating, planning for most of the contingencies, the bad things that could happen. I think we've done, due to the fact that we've built 3 other sections in that level of traffic in that environment. Candidly, some of the first ones in 13 and 14, that project that I always called the McDonald's project, that widening right at the Four Corners, golly, that was chaotic. We learned a lot from that, and I think we planned this so as to make sure that the one lane of traffic in each direction, a commitment that we've made and we built the budget around, we built the design around, we'll be able to hold fast on that. So lanes will be a little narrower than they are currently, but it will be the same sort of thing when somebody going north wants to turn left into Car Wash all the way out to Pico Park, and access off of Freeze Boulevard or Freeze Drive. You're still going to be sitting in traffic blocking it up, but at least you'll be able to go in each direction, and so we'll see how well that goes. That's going to be one of those expenditures that's fairly significant that will be not terribly appreciated, because people will have a sense of inconvenience, and so I'm not promising a perfect continuation of traffic and business, but am assuring you that we'll troubleshoot and that we have looked at it in the design of the project. So anyways, there'll be a public meeting. We'll announce it one or two of various different ways, and we'll go forward. Do we have any questions yet?
Just one so far.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go open up one other item real quick, and then we'll get to questions. The news is breaking, if you will, if that's the way to describe it, on the announcement, I'd say the community long-awaited arrival of a more full-service grocery store. And as I've said in the previous weeks, Buehler's has earned a reputation as being a real successful operator, competitor in this kind of market. so they know what they're doing in these smaller towns near other regional shopping areas. And so I have every reason to believe that they will put together a store that really meets the needs of Galion shoppers. So I'm pretty excited about it. There will be some discussion over the next couple of weeks about some ways that we can provide incentives to the business so that we maximize the likelihood that this will be a successful operation, and that everybody involved will be glad that that this project, this contract with Perrin Management is coming into reality. So, you know, hang in there. It'll be yet this fall. I think if you want to buy a turkey from Bueller's, you'll probably be able to do that in Galion rather than going over to Ashland. So I think a timetable by the middle of the fall and into the end of 2021, there's every reason to believe that's going to happen. So, you know, it goes to like, what will the citizens want next, Matt? Well, we'll find out once we get Bueller's open. So, anyways, that's what I got tonight. Let's do some questions if there are some.
Okay, first question tonight came from Cindy. Has the new owner of the Sleep Inn Hotel taken over yet?
No, they haven't. We got a call today, and we extended. They were asking some questions about the service payment, the TIF, kind of operating in Galion and wanting to open up kind of a dialogue. I suggested to my assistant earlier today to set up a meeting. I really think it's better to negotiate or not negotiate with them for some of the judgments that were made against the previous owner. I don't think you do that on the phone, and so we're really hoping that they'll be back in touch. They'll set up a meeting, and we can actually have that meeting. I didn't even catch the name or ask for the name of the person, but I know my assistant, has written down that name. And I don't know, Matt, did that get scheduled, or are we kind of waiting for them to get back?
No, that got scheduled here in the next couple weeks.
Okay, so we'll be able to be more informative, but if you will, the selected or successful bidder at this point is touching base with us. So that's a real good thing. I bet everybody involved, including people who have reservations later in the year, are hoping for that cliched seamless transition. But we'll work on that. I from what I could gather in that initial conversation with the new owner, they do this. This isn't something where they drove by and say, "Gee, honey, why don't we buy a hotel?" This is an enterprise that's engaged in this, and so I'm honestly looking forward to meeting them and seeing what we can do to, on the local side, to do things to have this new operator be successful. It really, in spite of things that have been said about the previous owner, I think circumstances really did that business a disservice. And so if anybody in town got COVIDed from a business perspective, it was a Sleep Inn. So a little bit of empathy out of this old grouch is probably certainly in order, and but we're looking forward to the new operator, Cindy.
Okay, Cindy also had a follow-up question on that. So the change in ownership is not final?
I don't know the answer to that, other than that involves the mortgage company that took over the hotel, and this company was, I don't even know the folks' names or the name of the company. So, any case, I don't know if there's been a signing ceremony, but there's every reason to believe. I think there were just a little bit different answers, Cindy. I think there were 84 people got a bidding number, isn't that the number? Some ridiculous number of people either sat in on the internet auction or actually actively bid. So this hotel has value. It's been showing its there's a lot of cars out there. last week or two, there's been a lot of trucks parked around, so I think they're tapping into that construction worker market, which is always a real key to the Monday through Thursday type of success that you need to actually make money. So I'll stop acting like I know how to make money in the hotel business, and hopefully that's an adequate answer to to Cindy's question.
Okay, jumping back to the topic of Bueller's,
Yeah.
Cindy also made
Yeah.
a comment. Wonder why they closed the Delaware store.
I don't know the answer to that. I would, where there is little competition in Galleon, what I would guess or surmise about Delaware is that it's attracted every big box and upscale grocery vendor. I imagine the competition was brutal, but I don't know the answer to that question. I met the manager, good guy. So I'm excited about working with him, and and certainly you can't say enough about the interest in, the enthusiasm of upper management at Bueller's. I think they want to come here, and so it's a pretty, I think it's a good thing. I think just on that, are there any other questions?
Not at
Okay,
this time.
I'm gonna go, there is out in the community, that's not even the way to say it. The state of Ohio has put the liquor agency up for, and bid's not the right word, but taking proposals for somebody to operate a liquor store in Galleon. Okay? It was last awarded to a company, a business that had hoped to go into the old Galleon West, shouldn't call it old, the Galleon West property. It fell through, and so that liquor license was surrendered or sent back to Columbus. That's up for bid again. We're going to probably stay neutral. Excuse me. I'm going to stay neutral in terms of recommending. We're going to have a couple, maybe three, either new or existing operations in town that will submit proposals to the state, and so we're going to stay neutral on that. I think we will, as I said a few minutes ago, be working with Bueller's to help from some modest incentives that might help them, from on-the-job training contracts to looking at some possible incentive electric rates, to discussing, as some folks will remember, we have a local income tax credit program that council put into place a couple years ago. I think this project has enough new jobs that it may qualify for that. So over the next few weeks we'll be getting into that discussion in more detail, and so stay tuned with that. But as far as the liquor agency, we're going to we're not going to weigh in on that issue. So probably not going to come up now, but it may come up in a couple weeks if I hadn't mentioned it. Well, why didn't we do more to help this company or that company? So anyways, that's where we're at. We've communicated that back to Bueller's. We've also let one of the other businesses that's been in town for a while, we got an indication that they're going to pursue it. So with that, we really decided to, we don't, there's no reason to introduce us into that decision making with Columbus. They make their decision slightly influenced by what the local community may prefer. So I don't know. Why I brought that up, Matt? Just to keep talking, so in case there's something else to come up. Is there something else?
Yes, I do have another
Okay.
question. This
Yeah.
one came from Tom. He asked, what is the Free Center support resolution about?
It is what it is. Why now? Maybe a different way to ask that question. Why'd you bring it up now? It really is tied to one state funding program in particular, and potentially some other non-local funding, federal funding. God, it hurts me to even as it comes across my lips, federal funding, but I'm strongly of the mind in the camp of that we really, without a local commitment of freeze funds or other city funds, it is very difficult to have these other outside entities. In the first case, Jobs Ohio, through sort of a, vibrancy program. Not my name. I don't want to goof on it because they'll probably get pissed if they heard I was goofing on it. You know, we have such a wide audience, Matt, that I go viral every week. So that Jobs Ohio funding opportunity, really one of the key factors that they will be looking at is the extent to which the city is committed to this project. There is some hope that and I believe there will be a request of up to $2 million. That's the max request under this Jobs Ohio program. And so, you know, I think until, Tom, until we have put our money on the table, it is difficult. I think it's unrealistic to expect folks who are going to go out and try to raise the balance of that money to do that until the city has anteed in, put up the money. So this resolution makes a commitment to, and doesn't specify the form or exactly who it's going to, but it commits $5 million to the project, $5 million of freeze funds to the project. More specifically, it says the city will agree to make a request of the Freeze Foundation for up to $5 million. So that's really what it's about. Why now? Because there's an upcoming round of funding through Jobs Ohio. This would be the second round they've had under this vibrancy program. And I don't know how many more rounds of this kind of funding there'll be available. So I would hate to miss out, not make a request, and find out that requests from around the state, have utilized all the money that Jobs Ohio committed. So I don't want to stampede Galleon into this thing, but if we don't, as they say, put up, then we're not really going to be in a position to be taken sufficiently seriously. So I think that might be the best not talk around the answer that I've had in a few weeks, but that's why now. And in the discussion, it isn't binding. It's just a sense of the council. It's a commitment from city council, which reinforces the position that the mayor's been taking for a few years, that yeah, we get to a certain point, then the Freeze Foundation and the right terms and condition could really help this project become a reality. Heck, those people, proponents, are even calling it the Freeze Center. So anyways, that's, I think, the best answer. And if the other outside funds, the rest of the money necessary to build it, doesn't come through, then we're there's no loss of funds. There's nothing that bad that would happen to the foundation and its principle. So that's kind of the answer. Is there anything else bouncing off that, or any other questions on that?
No, not at this time.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the purpose of the resolution. If I had to guess, I would think it's going to go a couple readings. We'll be down one member likely tomorrow. Due to personal vacation and such. And so as close as the vote was on the issue of whether or not to fund the infrastructure and commit to the engineering of the big roadway grants, I imagine this will be something that'll prompt some lively discussion. Although I'll be pushing to get to an answer, the sooner the better, so that as Jobs Ohio starts actively soliciting for these community vibrancy requests, we aren't running to catch up with other communities that are going to make their case to Jobs Ohio in the interim. would want to mention that Galleon is, that, so you get a perspective, not everybody in the state, not all communities in the state are eligible to apply for these funds. And so it sometimes is not very artfully stated that our economic condition in this county is qualifies. And I heard someone talking the other day, it was like sort of shaming the fact that we're on all these lists as some sort of reason. It's like I don't understand that. We qualify for these funds, enough said on that. So we'll kind of see how it goes. I'm excited. I think it'll, and after the second reading, we really ought to be able to call the question. But it may be a narrow vote, and it may be 4-3. We'll have to put some lipstick on that princess if we take that one to the ball to compete with other communities. 4-3 votes, kinda. One could interpret that a lot of ways. It's better than a 3-4 vote, but it isn't the overwhelming support that I hope for. And I think by the time it's voted on, who knows? We may get 5 or 6 votes on that. So we, as in the proponents of trying to make this thing a reality. So, all right. Anything else?
Nothing further tonight.
Yeah, I just want to say I don't even know quite what the right words are. But in 1981, I filed for elective office for the first time in Galleon. And every time I've run for office since, I've had a challenger. And so part of me doesn't know how to act other than to say thank you. It's an odd way of, makes you feel good that there's support for, that other people in the community believe that myself and what we've been doing the last 8 years is worth sticking with. And so I'm going to do my best, and really looking forward to 4 more years. I think we're on the verge of completing a new start for Galleon, and giving the community more reasons to feel good about 22, 23, 24, 2023, 20, and not looking back into the 70s and with this kind of nostalgic, feel of, well, it's not like it used to be. Well, I'm really hope that I can play a part in having the next 4 years get us to completing that start, and people feeling increasingly better about their hometown or the town they moved in. Any more questions?
Yes.
Because I got one more thing to say, so ask the questions, and then I want to go back to the census, because I was talking with Andrew Carter, the editor of the Inquirer, this afternoon about the census. So let's ask me the question, and we'll come back to the census.
Sure. I had one come in from Christy. She said, "What is with the sinkhole at the intersection of Atwood and Liberty?"
Yeah, my gosh, two Fridays ago, I think. Fridays seemed to be kind of a bad day. I don't think it was Friday the 13th. I think it was the next one. Any event, we had a big water line break down there. And enough water was spilled, that it was drawing down the level in the water tower. So we had a pretty significant break. A week ago, who asked this question? Christy, I love you. I don't know. Do you have a relative that works for the city? Because last week I should have said this. Thank you for asking. We had a handful of staff show up. I think it was 11:30, 12 o'clock on a Friday night. And they worked like all night to get the water restored, and they did it in a way that didn't require a boil advisory, any of those. Oh my gosh. So shame on me for not mentioning that. We had our newest person, I'm told, down in the hole working on it, getting the pipe cut out and a new section of pipe put in. So they're doing stuff that I couldn't do, and so they did us all a big favor by showing up, doing. Somebody would say, well, they're just doing their job. Well, yeah, they're just doing their job, but we don't have a mandatory call out. You don't have to show up for overtime in the way our our labor contracts are set up. So they showed up because they want to. They showed up because they really like their job, and so that's the sinkhole. Kind of letting it subside to see if we've got, it's settled in to its maximum extent. Then we will replace the pavement, remove the pavement, get it compacted well, and then my guess is we'll probably have a contractor. What's those guys that do all the patching around here? I think they do a slick job. What's that?
Burnstall.
Burnstall. There's a commercial for Burnstall. So I'd likely have them or someone else come in, and they seem to be the best set up to do those little patch jobs. It's important enough that we probably won't try to do that in-house. So, good question.
I had
What else?
another question come in
Yeah.
from Cindy.
Yeah.
She's asked, what is with all the digging on 598 and Brant Road?
Well, they got to get the utilities where they need to be for the project. So you see, it looked like there's a gas line replacement going on. That's not us. The only thing real positive I can say about it is it gives the people who are out there a lot. You're going to get an idea. It's going to be like that if there's a quarter of a mile in this town where you really want to pay attention. It's out there in that construction zone, particularly out there as they get the utilities in place. So that's largely what it is. Yeah, we're going to actually move those lights. As zany, as stupid as that may seem, I'll let you know in advance. The choice was to put them up where they were at or wait until this project got constructed. So we decided, hey, we got to get them, even if we have to pay to install them twice, we're going to do that, because while it's not totally calmed down, that being 598 Brant Road, it's active a lot better than it was. So that's the answer to Cindy's question about what's going on out there. We moved some, we took a water line out of service, and we're trying to have our city utilities make more sense and be more efficient out there. So that's part of the digging and cutting, and you see a lot of our people out there, a lot of Mid-Ohio Pipeline people out there. So, yep, that's it. What else?
That is all I had.
Yeah, okay. One of it didn't. God, it seemed like it was a week ago. There was an initial story about the census. And we lost 4.5% of population. And if you read the articles that were out there, there were some communities in this county that really had significant drops. I think we lost less than 100 people, Matt. So one thing, you have to delve into the data, but this is what I think. I think over the past 10 years, we've had more deaths than births. And so just that replacement factor would cause shrinking. And I think when we get into looking at the data, we'll find that we actually grew a few dozen people. Now that isn't any, it's like, stop the presses. This is, great news. Gallion's growing again. But when you take those fewer births than deaths, because we are an aging community, and factor that into the equation, I think we'll find that we're holding our own and growing slightly. And I think that's a reflection on a bunch of things going right in the community. So if you all hadn't seen that story about Crawford County shrinking, Galion held its own. I think we avoided having that drop be even greater. And so that's something to feel good about. So if you're still here and you're still sticking around in Galion, don't leave now. We're just going to begin to, as I said a minute ago, get this movement forward to maybe the completion of the first re-emergence of Galion as a proud and growing community, and then at some point after that we can turn it over. But I do believe, and said all that we've stemmed the tide on that rather rapid erosion of people that we'd suffered over the last 2 census periods. So, some people may be laughing and saying, boy, this guy's really looking for a silver lining in that cloud. Maybe I am, but I did want to mention that. And so I guess, as I said before, thanks for sticking around. We're just getting this thing going, and thanks for the people that helped sign my petitions and the other people who, anybody in the community could run. We're told all the time you don't need qualifications for this job. So it's unfortunate what happened with the one announced opponent. People have to make decisions like that, and so my wife is the official O'Leary family Facebook, so if you want to know what we said on Facebook in response to some clarification on the person who withdrew, then take a look at that. But we have, a guy for like 50 years, or close to 50 years, you can't feel good about anything like that. And so life will go on. I appreciate the endorsement and the support, so. The reason I say that, I guess today's the last day to file as a write-in, so I don't know. Anybody want any green O'Leary for mayor yard signs? I probably got 300 or 400 or 500, so stop over. There'll be a collector's item someday. Not. So anyways, that's all I got. Anything else?
No, just want to point out Andrew Carter messaged me. Galleon lost 59 people.
Yeah. So that's a good number. I mean, that's a really relatively, what was that, 5 dozen people? I think one of the things, I know Andrew's going to look at this, do a little bit more in-depth, deep dive or whatever, but I think in net, some people must have moved in, because I gotta believe, I mean, I'm getting to that age where, you'd see all old people, older people. First thing they look at they go back to the front page. The first thing they look at is the obits. So, they're unfortunately, as you get older, you lose people at a fairly rapid rate. So it looks like, we'll report back. We're going to get to the understanding if we didn't, certain age groups, we didn't maybe grow, and that would be something to look at positively and look at planning forward. We run into, I'm going on a little bit here, but we have more people than folks would realize come into City Hall looking for a map, and frequently they are military retirees, or they're people who are coming back to the Galleon area or coming to the Galleon area for the first time because what they realize is tremendous real estate value. So as we look at it, I wouldn't be surprised if in that 45 to 50, 45 to 60 kind of group that we didn't see actual real growth in those parts of the population. And I think that's instructive to a lot of people in terms of retailers. Maybe we don't have this huge millennial crowd to market to, or but we have this early retiree group. So it'll be fun to plan off. A lot of times people talk about the census main purpose being, to allocate federal funds and get our fair share, and it does have a huge impact on Congress and where the seats are added or lost. But I think what we would benefit from over the next few months is looking at where we had especially positive data on the census and see if we can't weave that into our retirement strategy. If it turns out I'm missing that it's a lot of young families, then that starts to ring the bell with regard to the need for the Freeze Center. Because I think that's part of the skepticism. It's like, we don't need this, we won't use this. Well, maybe if you've got residents with more than 2 people, meaning there's kids in that house, maybe that points towards growing that part of our population, and the Freeze Center having a little bit more of a strategic growth component to it, or rationale for doing it. And it's not just people's excitement about travel sports and travel and tourism activity. This might be a reason non-natives or people from around the area decide Galleon's where they want to raise their family, because we have these things. So, we'll see. There's one thing for sure: all of the freeze money in the parks projects we've done, it sure doesn't hurt. And so, again, we'll look at that census data. But I wanted to leave tonight by, giving people that are viewing this now or view it later in the week a little bit of provoke a little thought about what this office is going to try to do with that census data and move forward and use it as a planning tool. So, all right. That's all I got. Anything else?
No new questions.
Yeah, I had no idea what we were going to talk about when I sat down here a little bit before 8, but I feel I'm glad that we we had a chance, got a few good questions, and there's no sense in prolonging this in the hopes that someone will ask a question. So, thanks a lot, Guy, and keep a forward look to it. And we are the Crawford County winners in the census sweepstakes of 2020. So away we go. Good night. See you next week.